Here.
Steve Schlock.
Here.
George Sleeper.
Here.
Letitia Wilkins.
Here.
Scott Smith.
Here.
And now the LDFA, Jeremy Burleson. Tom Erdman.
Here.
Tom Fleming.
Here.
Mike Henry. Andy Clavens.
Here.
Gail Patterson-Gladney.
Here.
Kathy Pyle.
Here.
Joe Reeser.
Here.
Kevin Schooley.
Here.
Grant Spencer.
Here.
Stephanie Timmer.
Here.
All right. Look for the approval of the agenda. Just need a motion and a second.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. You just want to do council first? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no, it's approved.
I'd like to call the order the South Haven City Council and South Haven LDFA Authority meeting, joint meeting, Monday, June 3rd, 2019.
Approve the agenda.
And I'd like to, well,
I'll make
I'd like to approve the agenda.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, no. Passed.
All right, this time, interested citizens in the audience will have a chance to speak on items not on the agenda. Is there anybody here that wants to talk about anything we're going to talk about? All right, seeing none. We're on.
Okay, well, thank you very much for members of the LDFA and the City Council for attending this strategic planning session. The LDFA is undertaking an update to their strategic plan, which was last updated around 2007 to 2009. So we have some updating to do. What we have done here is the LDFA has approved Jim Hedinger to undertake that strategic planning process. So I'll get myself out of the way and introduce James Hedinger, who has been an economic development professional for over 45 years. He headed up Battle Creek Unlimited for over 30 years, and we're lucky to have him undertake this process with us. So without further ado, James Hedinger.
Thank you, Kate. Good evening, everybody, and thanks for the opportunity. We're going to go through kind of a brief explanation because people throw terms of like economic development around pretty carelessly, and I think what I'd like to do is make sure we all have at least some common space and vocabulary and concepts. This is the second time I've been before a group like this. You'll notice the guy down in the corner of the newspaper article here has a lot more hair than the guy holding it up. And this was from February of 1979. I was invited here by Arthur Clark to talk to the city council about economic development that was going on in Battle Creek. So 40 years later, I'm back. Only this time I live 7 miles north of you, not very far, close enough that anytime these two or the mayor or Councilman Reeser or others that are involved with economic development want to call me, I take the calls all the time. Tonight, I need to get your input because whether you're LDFA or City Council, you're still a policymaker in your position, and staff follows policy. Staff also tries to prompt policy, and that's what I consider myself. I need to know what you think about certain aspects of economic development in the community and how you want to pursue it, if you want to pursue it. As Kate indicated, I've been in economic development for 45 years. I started out when I was a doctoral student in Missouri, doing extension work for small communities there. I'm a native of Albion, Michigan, which is a community I'm going to mention a little bit later on in this presentation in a not so favorable light, but still it needs to be mentioned. But I've always loved the Great Lakes. Wanted to come back to Michigan. I was able to get back in 1978 to an organization called Battle Creek Unlimited, which was chartered by the city of Battle Creek. And remember that lesson too, chartered by the city of Battle Creek to do something, and that was transform Fort Custer from an abandoned military base to a modern industrial park. Today there's over 117 businesses in that industrial park. The environmental contamination has been totally cleaned up. Green belts, wetland preservation. But like I said, over 100 businesses and over 10,000 employees. So it's regarded as one of the country's best and earliest base conversion projects. I was fortunate to be part of that for a long time. And unlike you, when a business came to me there and said, we need 4 or 5 acres or we need some land to build a plant on, I'd say, how much do you need? You know, 'cause I got 3,000 acres here. You got a tougher task. And when somebody comes now to South Haven, we got some serious searching to do to find something that is close to what they want or can be modified to meet their needs. And that's a totally different ballgame. It's a much tougher arena to play in. We plan to do exercises like this throughout the community, a fair amount of data crunching. I've enlisted the help of some other economic development professionals that I know. Maybe the most notable that you might know is Birgit Close in Grand Rapids, the CEO of the Right Place program. She's been there for over 30 years, and you better bet she and I have been allies and trading notes and prospects and everything else with each other. But she agreed over the weekend to do a peer review of whatever we come up with. So there's a couple of other individuals that I've contacted that I'm going to talk to about this as well. So I want you to come out of this with the very best plan that you can, and something that's very customized to the needs of South Haven's present and future. Having said all that, I want to introduce my associate, because without her, the electronics would be a disaster.
No
And
pressure, because hopefully, I'm just kidding.
I did an interim CEO stint at Cornerstone Alliance after Vicki Pratt departed down there, and I was there for about 8 or 9 months and worked with the staff down there. But I also met Patricia through the chamber and was pretty impressed with her networking capabilities and her ability to hook up with small businesses. So I kept that name on my short list in case I needed somebody for a project, and this one came up and she's well qualified. Any input?
Really honored to be a part of this. Jim and I felt like the underdogs when we were into this project. It's incredibly important to both of us to do a good job for you and to get out all the information, because we're not trying to waste your time. Our intention is to not survey the community to death, but to talk to the people and the key people that are going to give us the best information. My background obviously is networking, but it's also marketing. So our hope is that we can also come up with some unique solutions as well, so that, you know, whatever it is that's so special about South Haven and why people would come here versus everyone else, that you leave here feeling that that was accomplished. So thanks for letting us be here.
So we'll start. As I said, there's really no good definition of economic development. It's tossed around quite a bit. What I'd like to do is just give us some definitional open space so we know what we're talking about when we use certain terms. These are all a variety of definitions of what economic development is. It is interdisciplinary, so it's really hard to construct a curriculum to train people to do this kind of work. I teamed up with a professor of economics from Kalamazoo College a long time ago, and we did come up with a curriculum, and Oklahoma University has also been very aggressive through the years in trying to educate people in economic development. At its basis, though, it is the creation of wealth, and wealth has kind of taken on a bad meaning these days. But in fact, economic developers consider wealth to be that money that you have left over once you have provided for the basic needs of a human being: shelter, food, basic needs. Then you've got, it's called in other ways, but the idea of this definition is to increase that discretionary income as much as possible. Economic spending of money in the community. Number two, the purposeful intervention into an economy to enhance the economic well-being of a community. This implies a group of citizens intelligently organized with a plan go about trying to enhance the economic well-being, whatever that might be, in the community. The third is my favorite definition because it's kind of, in a way, the most honest definition. Again, citizens acting together in pursuit of community growth through the production and sales of products and services to customers well beyond the 10-mile limit. And for the sake of our work, we're going to consider South Haven and then 10 miles out as kind of like the general market area. And I believe that if we can sell products and services outside of that 10 market area or that 10-mile area, we bring money into the community, and every dollar that we bring in will circulate 2 to 3 times in a community this size. Again, you've increased the discretionary income of the community, and you will, in so doing, enhance some of the other economic activity. Number 4 kind of restates this, bringing more money into the community than goes out, gaining a surplus of trade. Number 5, again, that process or the process, a string of actions that influences growth and restructuring of an economy to enhance the well-being. That doesn't tell us an awful lot, but it does tell us that people have to work together and be on the same page and travel in the same direction. The creation of jobs and wealth, the improvement of the quality of life. I guess if we're good at the jobs and wealth part, the other part will follow along with that. And by improvement of quality of life, meaning more residents in the area, more students in the school system, more contributions to the arts and other kinds of volunteer activities. If you're successful with that, you've got a talented level of people or a cadre of people in town that want to act together to improve the community. The last definition is probably even better than my favorite one, but it comes from an original professional association, and it says pretty much the same thing that I would say in number 3. I'm just more concerned about market area and the impact of the dollars that we would bring into South Haven. So I think at its basis, we're talking about community improvement through directed, purposeful economic activity. And if we can stay on that page together, then I think we'll all know what we're talking about. You've probably gone through some strategic planning exercises. What we know is that strategic planning is a product of the industrialized era. It's still a very useful tool, but it assumes a straight line approach to change. And it also assumes that those goals you've set for yourself 5 to 7 years down the road will be valuable and relevant once you get there. That doesn't work that much anymore. There is a place in New Mexico, the Santa Fe Institute, that studies something called complexity science, which is particle theory. Things bump into each other and cause changes and all of that. When you overlay complexity science on strategic planning, you get a bumpy, disruptive process, and you have to pick your goals carefully because they're changing, and they may not be 5 to 7 years down the road what you think they are today. And when you get there, you may not like what you see all of a sudden. So we're going to have to be a little bit flexible, but where we find a strong consensus from you on what's important to this community, that's going to be built into the plan. If in any professional judgment there is a problem with that, I will tell you, or I will give you my opinion, and still as policymakers, you have to do what's best for South Haven. Our plan is to, as I said, kind of shake the tree. There's an exercise called Brains on Fire, and I've kind of gotten a little bit of it into your questionnaire, but basically Brains on Fire is you thinking real hard about what South Haven does better than any other community you can think of, or what South Haven does that no other community does. Those form the basis for what we would call a strategic competency. And if South Haven could be the first one in the water on a strategic competency, you face the growth trajectory that you might want to enjoy for 5 to 7 years. I don't know what that competency might be, but every community has hidden strengths, and part of the Brains on Fire is to try and find what the hidden strengths are. You have a very interesting company in town called Revere. Many of you know Revere, but did you know their water purification technology screens out PFAS? And what have we got in this state and this country? In fact, my guess is they could probably build 500,000 square feet over there, hire several hundred people, and still not be able to satisfy the demand in Chicago alone once the extent of this problem becomes known. But it's it's that kind of technology that may not be widely known, but nonetheless has tremendous growth potential. We want to find what those things are in South Haven, and we need your help. You've lived here, you know the people. I guess in conclusion to this, we don't want to be best practices South Haven, we want to be next practices South Haven. That would be the ideal outcome. Find something that nobody else is doing and capitalize on it. Economic development is a fad-ridden practice. If you talk to us, you hear a lot of the same language: talent attraction, innovation, high growth potential, all of that. The problem for you and me is a lot of this rhetoric was written by academics for larger cities. That's okay. We don't want to be part of the one-size-fits-all gang. We want to be unique, and we want to identify the strengths and weaknesses and opportunities for South Haven. And I might add that while the LDFA authorized this effort, and we're going on with it, the county economic development apparatus is also undergoing a strategic planning process. And I have been in touch with Zach Morris regularly, and it's our intent to align with them, but only after we have done the South Haven bit. We will then integrate South Haven with the county plan. But it was felt here that the needs of the South Haven community are going to be particularly important over the next few years, particularly when the power plant closes, and that we really need a document that represents the interests of South Haven. So we will move on then. You got to ask the question, is it appropriate for local government to meddle in the local economy? And some of the work I've done in more rural counties, there have been legitimate questions from Tea Party groups and others about, is this what local government should be doing? And my response to that is, and I do believe in limited government, but my response is, this is almost necessary these days. Number one, the world's changing like crazy, and we all know that. I mean, 30 years ago, you wouldn't be sitting in a meeting with this kind of technology and this kind of capability to disseminate information. Two main forces, the information technology revolution and the globalization of the world economy. It's my belief that you just can't sit still and accept the status quo. You need to be adaptive so that when things change, you're there at the corner by the time the bus shows up. Second of all, your fellow communities do it. And while you'll hear me argue against herd behavior, or people running mindlessly all in the same direction, this is one that being part of the herd might be a good idea, except that you need your own distinct message, and that's one of the things that we'll work on. Understand, though, that there's 35,000 taxing units out there, and all of them are looking for resources, and some of them will look in our backyard before all's said and done for those resources. I always used to tell people who complained to me about competition that I had 23,000 competitors on the North American continent that were looking for jobs in industry. And there were only about 1,000 projects a year in the entire North American continent, so we know all about competition. Third, you anticipate severe negative impacts from a near future nuclear power plant closure, and you need to prepare yourself. We think so far the impact on South Haven is going to be indirect, but it's still going to hurt. And communities, according to the literature of economic development, are motivated more by negative incidents towards economic development than they are positive. Battle Creek, in our own example, they got motivated to get active when the base closed because they lost about 4,000 jobs over a 3 or 4 year period. Kalamazoo woke up once Pfizer, First of America, and Western Michigan University all reported cuts in employment. Pfizer back then, Upjohn, that really woke people up, and they organized themselves. So, fortunately or unfortunately, negative events play kind of a positive role in bringing a community together and getting them to act. The last one here, I think, is the best justification that I can think of, but again, this is your decision somewhat. We know that the tourist economy is good for South Haven. We've seen the data. The question is, what do we do the rest of the year? How do we stimulate economic activity the rest of the year? How do we keep or attract more students to the school system the rest of the year? Tourism is great because people come in and spend an average of $200 or $300 a day in your local economy. That's great. We love that, and we probably ought to look at ways to expand it if we can. But it's never a good idea to keep all the eggs in one basket. And I've talked to some people, I call it ground truthing, you know, walking around the bars up and down and talking to people, and you know, more often than not, well, this is a tourist town. You're not going to do much with this town. Wrong. There's a lot that can be done with this town, and a lot should be done with this town. And a lot of it starts with people like Grant, who've operated businesses here for a while, very successful, and still have a tremendous market ahead of them. How do we help businesses like that prosper? That's kind of an essential part of economic development, and we'll talk about that under the strategy section. But I think your best justification, based upon what I've seen, it's been about a year or so, is number 4. Councilman?
I guess I'd like to hear you say once and for all that you think, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but do you think that tourism and a good, viable economy outside of tourism can coexist, and can we have a year-round economy along with tourism? Can we have both?
Yes.
At this point, you think so?
Yes.
Because so many naysayers say it's not possible. And it'd be nice to have you say that, so thank you, because I start to have my own second guessing on it, but I'd like to believe that, and I think we're relying on that possibility in this community.
No, I think my answer is yes, and I think it needs to be yes. I think for this community to enjoy great public infrastructure, it needs a year-round economy. You know, you've got a pretty decent one now, but again, you're competing with an awful lot of very, very well-organized, attractive communities for a finite amount of resources, and you've got to look good all the time. In January, you've got to look good all the time. So, on to how we would do this. You might think of a city-based approach which aligns and coordinates with other actors, and I said there earlier, the city of Battle Creek set up a nonprofit corporation to do something. That's within your power. You can set up a city department to do economic development. Problem with that is it's subject to the Open Meetings Act, and sometimes some of the companies that you deal with for competitive reasons don't want their names out there. And if South Haven is competing with Dowagiac or somebody for business, we don't want them to know. We don't want Dowagiac to read the South Haven paper and get their prospect list from it. That happens. You know, it doesn't happen direct economic developer to economic developer, but I've had people attempt back in my day to make Freedom of Information requests out of Fort Wayne, Ohio. You know, what business of it is theirs? But I competed with them at the time. That's the downside, but you know, there is a nonprofit corporation approach that you could take, and it has certain advantages. Laws in Michigan tend to favor that approach, but I think for the present, the best decision you can make is, you know, how should the city do this, and with what resources are we going to do it? And we'll continue with that discussion too on a later slide. You have the option of folding into the county program. Market Van Buren. As I indicated, I've worked with Zach. I know him. I consider him to be a rising young professional in the area, and I hope he stays in West Michigan to develop his economic development career. And I've said that much to him. But when you work for a county, you serve many masters. And one of those masters may not, or may have problems different from the rest of the county. Again, you have to decide whether you get the best bang for your buck going in that particular direction. 3, contracting with an organization like Lakeshore Advantage to manage economic development. You've done this in the past with other organizations. They were located a little bit farther away, but I'm pretty certain Lakeshore Advantage would be interested in taking South Haven on, and that would put you into a marketing pool of communities that live on the lakeshore and share certain common assets and outlooks. Plus the people up there are pretty doggone competent. They've done a good job. But that's a possibility for you, and it doesn't have to be Lakeshore Advantage. It could be Cornerstone Alliance if you want it, but it is an option for you. The 4th is do nothing, and the only time I'd recommend you do nothing is when you've got thousands and thousands of acres and lots of money, and the people next door to you are treating their businesses terribly, and they're running them out one after another, and you're sitting there with your net capturing each one of them. Now, how often does that happen? Hardly ever. And I think the choice to do nothing is a choice in favor of urban deterioration. But again, you know your community better than I do. My job is to prompt information. Maybe doing nothing is a viable alternative. I have a hard time believing it based upon my time here, but it's still an alternative. I've talked to city managers up and down the west side of the state. Some will say it's not in our charter, we don't do it. And that's it. Fortunately, the people that told me that live in a pretty wealthy community. Maybe they're going to get by. When we're done with all of this, and throughout the process, these are all the things that I'd like to accomplish, and they're going to be a little bit difficult, and we're going to do that. Down to number 5, anybody I've talked to say, watch out for the rental housing problems. So to show you how well I follow advice, I'm going to jump head first right into it. There is a relationship between economic development and housing policy, just like there's relationships between economic development and other things that go on in the city. Fiber, which is very important nowadays. Let's find out what the formula is for a community to have good economic development, but also be able to boast a housing component that complements not only the major moneymaker for the community, but the year-round moneymakers for the community. And that'll be a bit of a trick. I'm going to admit that up front, but we're going to look hard to come up with what we think is a good formula. Education is part of this as well. And we'll talk about education a lot throughout this process, but in economic development, one of the things we've learned over the past 10 years is the relationship between educational attainment level or certification attainment level and income level is very positive. The more you have of one, the more you're going to have of the other. And you flip that proposition on its back, lesser or low educated communities also happen to be low compensated communities as well. So there's no substitute for proclaiming the importance of education in a community. And you know, I could guarantee you almost that if we achieved a level of 70% college educated people or something, businesses would come running. That doesn't happen, by the way, but it still illustrates how important it is, I think, to have an educated workforce, and that's something we've got to work hard on. The city's regulatory environment, we'll talk about this a little bit more, but I always ask those 4 questions when it comes to regulation and city's business. And usually if a city looks through the regulation with those tests, they wind up tossing out a few here and there. But it's not an earth-shaking process. I will meet with city staff and talk to them and see what they think that they're doing that might contribute to economic development, or something they do that doesn't or that hurts it, and we'll get that out in front of you. This is, how the city's regulatory environment works is part of the picture, but how the state's regulatory environment works is also part of that picture, and even the Fed. We'll talk about that a little bit more under business climate, but as far as city regulation is concerned, and I'll get to this also a little bit in the next 2 slides, you can do yourselves an awful lot of good in economic development without spending an awful lot of money, just by having a city staff. And I know city staff here, and I know they've been working on it, but customer service skills are just, tremendous assets. People don't expect it when they go to a city. They're existing under the stereotypes that there are uncaring bureaucrats in that building. But you walk into the city hall, you get a little bit of a different feeling. You get the welcoming, those kinds of things. When a business goes to a person in the city for a permit or something, that transaction needs to be as professional as possible. And I've not heard any complaints at all about this, but it's something that, again, if the city is regarded as economic development or business friendly, it'll save itself a lot of money. It won't have to tell the rest of the world that it is business friendly. You can show examples. Who will be our stakeholders and partners? Those are people that live here in the community, that may have some influence, some time on their hands, some expertise. We'd like to find out who some of those people are and see if they can't be organized towards an effort. We are finding out what the needs of the business community are, the employer community, as they should also be called. That's been going on for about a year now. We have to craft a message. What's our signature to the world? When somebody logs into the South Haven site, which I hope we have as part of an economic development program in the future, what's going to be our message? How are they going to be greeted? And there's a certain strategy that's got to be tied to this. And then finally, Winston Churchill once said, well, all these ideas are just wonderful and everything else, but what are you going to do at the end of the day? How are you going to evaluate it? And we will make some recommendations based upon what we find in the way of goals and strategies, but I don't think this process is worth doing if you don't evaluate it every once in a while. On to the strategies of economic development, and let me emphasize up front, in most cases these strategies do not stand alone. They are partnered or coupled up with others here on this page, or others that we don't see here, but these are kind of the important ones. Business retention, which you've been doing now for a while. This is the most cost-effective form of economic development. You're not going to other places, you're working with people that you know, people that you can possibly persuade, but approximately 7 out of 10 new jobs that are created in this country are created by businesses right in your community. So you pay attention to them. They're taxpayers, they employ people who pay taxes in turn. Anything to enhance their presence, prolong their presence in South Haven is something that is very, very fundamental to what we're going to do. And even if you don't do economic development, you should direct city staff to go out and talk to at least the larger employers in the community. I think that you would find out that not only do they welcome the help, but they appreciate the attention they get. And that's pretty important in and of itself. Second is economic gardening, and this originated in Littleton, Colorado by a guy by the name of Chris Gibbon, who decided that it wasn't a good idea to chase manufacturers, that America was moving to a commodity manufacturing economy. And what he did in Littleton, Colorado was set up a small business system of ecology, where and you can go to the Littleton, Colorado website if you'd like and see how they do this, but it is intensely focused on small business development, entrepreneurial development, and it really involves creating an ecology around these businesses that pretty much caters to their every need. It's labor-intensive stuff, but again, if you find that strategic competency amongst that mix, you can make the whole effort worth it within about a year. But small businesses, and I'll say this when we get down here to small business entrepreneurialism, they have a high mortality rate. There's a lot of heartbreak in working with small businesses. You see people lose everything they've had because they were betting on an idea. And I'm not saying it's not a good idea to work with small business. They are job creators in our economy. The question is, how involved do you want to get in things that take much longer to come to fruition, that contain a little bit more heartache, but also contain that promise, however small, of something really different that makes this community really wealthy in a short period of time. Attraction. You're attracting investment by advertising, marketing, visitations. You're going to facilities. Might go to Chicago and visit with a big bank and say, who are your customers that are looking at doing projects in Michigan? I used to do that a lot. It's still fairly workable. Banks, trade associations, groups like that, all of them have people that are moving around, and it's always good to get intel on that, and then you can fashion a proposal to attract them to the community. You would not do attraction if you didn't do good retention. And think about it, if you're going to invest $3 or $4 million in a community, you're going to do a little ground truthing of your own. You're going to talk to some other businesses, and you're going to ask them, how are these people to work with, meaning City Hall? How are the policymakers here? Are they pro or anti-business? If you don't get the right answers out of your resident, if Grant doesn't give an outsider good answers about his experience in South Haven, it doesn't matter what you and I do. It doesn't matter how pretty our videos are or our brochures. His word is going to be taken far faster than ours. We're being paid to promote it. He lives here and pays taxes. So they're going to listen to him an awful lot more than me. Ergo, it's my job to make him happy, however difficult that might be. Business climate. We talked about this a little bit under the city regulatory, but I want to expand the concept here. It's pretty amorphous in a way, but I already indicated you can realize a great reputation by being very helpful to your business people. But under business climate, you got to think about what is it in our local economy, culture, society that would attract business, that would promote growth, and how do we harness that energy and move it in the right direction. Again, a lot of it may not be South Haven's doing. We live in the state of Michigan, and the reputation of the state of Michigan sometimes overshadows our efforts. A lot of you, well, probably most of you, because of their advertising, would know a company by the name of Folgers that makes coffee. A long time ago, they visited Battle Creek when I was in the saddle there, and we had a heck of a day with them. The guy they sent up just loved us. And his parting words were, I think we've got a deal here. Well, this was back in the early 1980s, where the reputation of Michigan was really bad. And 2 days later, that guy called me and said, Jim, you guys have got a great program. You can do everything we want and everything we need. But he said, if I take a proposal to my board of directors to set up a plant in Michigan, I'm going to be unemployed real fast. The state, the perception of the state outweighed whatever good we were able to bring to the table to that company on that day, and the promise of what we would do for them in the future. The reputation of the state was so bad. And fortunately, it's gotten much better since then, and there were times where we have been considered one of the best places in the country to do business. Tourism. The question we have here, and we've talked to the tourism people, and I think they're doing a great job. The question is, do you want to expand that into conventions? And if so, are there facilities? And if there aren't, should there be? And again, conventions might take tourism another 2 or 3 months into that year-round cycle. So it's something to think about. Again, if you were, in the summertime, I don't doubt you would have any problem at all attracting conventions here. In the wintertime, it might be a little different. We'd have to glitz it up quite a bit. But under the administration of John Engler, think about him however you will, the MEDC used to host investment seminars in January at Boyne Mountain or places like that, just to demonstrate to businesses that Michigan was passable in the wintertime. And that may not, it doesn't sound too far-fetched when you consider that, in my experience, the Southerners in particular telling the overseas businesses, you don't want to go to places like Michigan. It's patrolled by Union goons and it's under 9 inches of snow 12 months out of the year. So fighting those kind of perceptions off is part of it. But it was demonstrated to many site selection people that Michigan is passable and manageable in wintertime, and just in my own experience, some of the Japanese had heard that from the Southerners, and I was able to show them uninterrupted productivity because the city cleans the snow off the streets in the north. Yeah. This community, in terms of physical development and redevelopment, I've seen some pretty aggressive responses to deterioration, and you've got to keep that up and keep that at a high level. A lot of economic developers won't even mention healthcare. For some reason, it's been important to me as an economic developer because it relates to the quality of people in the community. I had a site selection consultant out of Chicago tell me a few years ago that healthcare indicators are becoming much more important as communities are assessed. Communities with high infant mortality rates, high birth weights, are considered to be undesirable. A, they can't take care of their children. B, it means higher healthcare costs and lost productivity because you don't have a healthy populace. I spent almost all of my volunteer time as an economic developer on the boards of hospitals, rehab hospitals, family health care. Battle Creek had a real serious problem with infant mortality, and it was hurting the community. It was one of those things that popped up like a pimple in the middle of the forehead. No hiding it or anything else, and it took coordinated, purposeful action on the part of the community to punch that number down. But things like this are now coming to the attention of site selection consultants and the companies they serve, and you are in the midst of a major league healthcare transformation. Your hospital has changed ownership, it's going to change footprint, and then you've had Spectrum by Lakeland, which has created a whole different environment. And if this doesn't go anywhere, please pay attention to your health care, because I'm going to come back to my hometown of Albion. No hospital, no public schools. And if it wasn't for Albion College, there'd be no Albion now. So that's one of those things. Hospitals are how a community can define itself. So keep an eye on them. They're your partners, whether they like it or not. Beyond that, this community has some pretty unusual assets. I used to sail, only it was for work. It wasn't, it was to pay my way through college. So there's a difference between a port and a harbor. But anyway, you have both. You have a Great Lake. 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago, you were designated a Pure Michigan Trails Town designation. Trails are getting to be very big things, particularly when they hook up with other cities, and there's a lot of blueprints surrounding this community for hookups. You're going to reach a stage where I think you can do economic development. An aspect of this would be trails or kayaking and all of that, but it's got to be packaged very carefully, and there've got to be very few free moments along the way for the individuals, particularly if you want to keep them close and spending their money in the community. Workforce education, skills development. I think Grant would probably agree with me that it's the #1 problem facing businesses. Certainly, he's got that issue and he pays well. And I always think that employers who pay well and still have workforce problems are in a market that needs a little bit of work. So we've got to figure out how to drive educational and certification attainment levels in South Haven. Some of the actors are listed up there, and I said in the beginning when I was presenting for this contract that it was great to see Kevin as part of this mix because we're going to be talking about education a lot. And again, it is very, very important that we are able to offer a full range of educational options here. Relating back on my own experience in Fort Custer, the community college changed leadership when we first started the project, and the timing couldn't have been more perfect. The new president came in and broke all the old practices, set up new ones. They happened to align perfectly with what we were trying to do. I was able to tell any business without qualification or reservation, we can recruit, screen, and train workers to your specification. You tell us what you need. That particular concept has evolved now to a point where in Fort Custer, if a business wants to train its employees in the use of a piece of equipment or something, that can be beamed in now over the internet. The curriculum can be sent to the factory floor. The person doesn't have to leave the plant. The company doesn't lose time, somebody traveling back and forth and all of that. It's right there for them. We call that convenience learning, and businesses love it. And if we could evolve ourselves to a position where we could do that here, we'd be in awfully good shape. Because nowadays, say a large employer in Calhoun County, Denso Manufacturing, they bring in a new piece of equipment. All they have to do is give the training manual to the community college. They put it on a curriculum and beam it right back into the affected unit in the factory. That's pretty far down the road stuff, but those are the kinds of solutions that the current situation, and I call it a crisis really, warrants. You have towns in Iowa now that are offering to pay off student debt of certain kinds of kids if they'll come to the community and live for 5 years. When I was doing rural development work in Missouri, there was a federal program where we put doctors in rural underserved areas, and in return the federal government paid down their debt for them. It's very possible for programs like that to be developed, particularly by the business community, to keep the labor pool robust. Right now it's a huge problem, and the only good news is we're not the only ones. Everybody's fighting with it, but everybody's spending a lot of time on it too, and we need to have our three providers really bear down on this and figure out the best way to go along with the economic development plan. But be assured I'm going to spend a fair amount of time with educational entities in the area. Finally, small business entrepreneurialism, kind of a restatement of economic gardening, but not as intense. You make things easy for small business, but you don't cater to them as you would in economic gardening. You're more responsive. Entrepreneurial development is kind of a specialty type of thing. One of the reasons why Kathy is here a little bit is because she and I have crossed paths in the past with her experience in Battle Creek, but Chambers of Commerce do this work really well. There's some national models of that, and you know, I think if appropriately approached and all of that, the local chamber might be a better source for small business entrepreneurial development. They probably do a fair amount of it already. Finally, the airport, because I've been here a while and I haven't heard anybody talk about the airport that much. And I was kind of in on the relocation of the Western Michigan University College of Aviation from Kalamazoo to Battle Creek, where they had, again, unlimited land to expand upon and all of that. But the dean of the College of Aviation berths his boat in your harbor. He loves this city. I know him well. He's talked to your mayor. It's not a big thing to ask him to ask his students to do touch and goes at the South Haven Airport, because touch and goes bring you revenue. If you're going to be a year-round economy, you're probably going to need a little more action at the airport. And since I've done some of this work in rural areas, I know people kind of think the airport. That's the rich man's place, or that's where the rich guys have their toys. In fact, 75% of the private jet flights taken in this country are business related. And more often than not, they're like engineers traveling to remote locations, remote plant locations where they can't get there efficiently by flying Detroit, Atlanta to something else. So think about your airport in terms of future development and how it might serve the economy of the area. Tools available. And we're only going to talk about a couple of these because I have a feeling, I know it's true of me, it's probably true of you, there's a couple up here I wish I didn't see. But they are or have been tools that are available to cities in Michigan to do economic development. Tax abatements, you do. I want to go down to feeding off of the tourism flow. At one time, there was a demographic out that 312 people were moving out of Cook County every day. I'm not sure if that's still the case. I don't know how Cook County could sustain that. They probably can't. But is there a possibility with, particularly with a concentration of those people coming here as part of the tourism badge, is there a likelihood that they would want to set up businesses here? My experience is people don't like to work where they vacation. But you have a new type of worker, you have that independent contractor out there that's running around that needs just a computer and a laptop to do their work. And I'm telling you, there's probably no better combination than a laptop, the Wi-Fi system, and a Great Lake to do creative type of work. I live on a Great Lake, and I try and do all my creative work looking out over the water. Assemblage of land assets as land and property. That's pretty much undergoing. I think the staff knows where the opportunities are. What we've got to do is figure out an intelligent way to project that out to a potential market. Here's the opportunities in South Haven, the development sites, etc. And then finally, international assets. The deputy city manager and I were in a meeting with one of your companies, and he was totally unaware of some of the facilities nearby that would help him with his international shipping. These are available to South Haven. It just takes somebody with an understanding that can marry them up with the needs of the local business. Port of entry, foreign trade zone, U.S. Customs clearance, etc. It's not on the list, but just to give you an idea of what cities can do, Youngstown, Ohio was a city that at its height had about 200,000 people living in it. It was a steel city. Of course, steel largely went away. It became specialty milling in the United States. Youngstown did something which the experts proclaimed to be economic development significant. They looked at their city and they saw that many of the areas that they were supposed to be serving didn't have people living in it. So they retracted their boundaries. They made the city physically smaller, more dense. That achieved huge economies of scale, eliminated a lot of wasted time, and was called nationwide a tremendous economic development strategy move. Nobody thought of it but the people of Youngstown, and they're in pretty good shape right now. The bottom line to some of this stuff is, at some point, if you're serious about economic development, a website has to be crafted and developed that communicates the economic development message, including the available properties, the message, the frequently asked questions. 80% of all site selection searches that are undertaken by consultants or companies looking for new sites, 80% start on the internet. If you don't have the right message there, you can be eliminated from the list, you won't make the cut, you'll never know it because somebody was looking at your statistics and determined just on that profile alone that you didn't meet what they were looking for in the way of being a viable community. So It sounds a little strange, but the idea of having a good proactive information-laden website is just to survive the cuts. Survive the cuts and get that site selection or that corporate real estate person in the community. Once we got them here, we'll get them. Some of you have done the exercises. I am willing to stay here and walk through them with you.
Hey, Jim. The mayor's requesting just a few-minute break just before we dive into this.
Okay. Yeah, my question was whether, you know, they felt like you would like me to walk you through the questions, or...
Just give everybody a quick stretch break, and I'll
Okay.
here since seven.
All right.
If you want to stretch.
Because if not, I'll write it up on the board. And if everybody has a smartphone, I'm assuming. most
Or an
people have a
Android.
smartphone, yeah, you can actually pull them out. Won't look like when you log in. It's going to be just like my phone right here. It's dark blue. It says begin survey. You have the option to take the survey and just go. But once I start, and we start answering at the same time, if you want to see your results show up with everybody else, you're not going to have control over how much time you have. So you might be answering a question, and if you run out of time and I click, we're on to the next question. Isn't that fun? Yeah, because we want to get out of here. But also know, if you feel like you don't want to respond entirely right now, because some of them are verbal answers, you have the link and you can take this later. We'll give you about, what is it, a few days? Up to 2 weeks to take it, but we would really like it within the next couple days. Is everybody able to log in?
So we're stating the proposition that the city should pursue an aggressive, proactive, and hopefully sustainable economic development program.
This is the question that we're on right now.
If somebody says no on that, they shouldn't be able to survive.
Is everybody done?
Or close?
Good. Next question. Pop up on your phones right now. City of South Haven should utilize the following. Ooh, isn't that fun? It's the little things.
You're in touch. Love that.
I'm set, you ready? All right, seems to have settled. Next question.
Yeah, we'll ask you to rank and not against each other, just every one of these categories, like local business retention, expansion, on a scale of 1 to 10, how important is that to you?
We'll have to move the arrows up to rank these. So I'll give you a little bit more time on this one.
Oh.
Fortunately, they only have 6. Just another minute. Just a couple more.
Wait.
Tricia.
We're good? All right. Thank you, everybody. Next question will show up on your screen now. I'm gonna go to full screen so that we can see a lot more of these responses.
company statement of make more fire trucks.
Good job, teacher.
Ready? Five strengths. Is everybody done answering?
Question number 9 kind of restates part of question number 3, but there's a method to the madness there. Inserted a couple things that weren't in the previous matrix and recharacterized 1 or 2 of the activities. I still kind of need your prioritization. Downtown development wasn't in the first, but downtown development's obviously an important activity and it's already being done. But it's still, as the mayor of Johnstown, Pennsylvania said, the downtown is the signature of a community. And it's important to us because that's where a lot of people come when they come to South Haven. Even if they're going to the beach, they have to go by the downtown.
Gail, this is where you get out your checkbook?
Oh, we could just change again.
Just got less.
Okay, let's put check.
If you don't feel comfortable leaving your comments here, leave an envelope. You're welcome to write us a note. We can give you our cards. We can contact us later, but we just want you to be comfortable giving us that information.
Got a few people still typing, so just a few more seconds here.
I'm passing these down. So we can.
Comments pages, anybody want to write anything, stuff it in the envelope, help yourself. We'll read it.
Maybe an email address or something.
Put some more thought into it and send it later.
Yeah.
And we have on our last slide, I'll have the numbers for the.
There's one of the, well, all the email addresses are there now. And like I said, anything occurs to you, anything you want to add, it's better that we know it than not. So, you know, fire away and fall back. Can I answer any questions at all?
Jim, can you describe the next steps? What can the LDFA and the city council expect to see in the coming months?
At the beginning, I went through some steps. We'll be doing this exercise with a couple more groups in town. Definitely scheduled with Lake Michigan College and a number of local education providers in June. But we'll be talking to some other groups here in town. And we expect that to run through about mid-August. After that, it's pretty much analysis, information shaping, and I would like to come back with drafts and with ideas before we produce a final document. I mean, I want to ask the policymakers, are we doing what you think needs to be done for this community? And we will then proceed to produce a final document and ask for your approval and adoption. Late September, early October, I hope to be there. At any rate, this is going to be done before Thanksgiving. I guarantee it.
Is there anything else that needs to be accomplished tonight?
No. No, we just needed this information input, again, a session with people that are making policy for South Haven, and it'll be very valuable, and we're appreciative everybody stuck around for a while to do this.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Mayor, before you wrap up, on behalf of staff, we sincerely appreciate all of you for taking the time. It's a really diverse crowd as you look at all these different faces, and to have you all here spending a Monday night, it is greatly appreciated. Thank you very much. Mr. Mayor, Mr. Chair, whenever you're ready, you can call for a motion to adjourn.
I'll just also just reiterate the thank you, because this priority is set at top of our priority list for several years now, and it will continue to be top of the priority as far as I'm concerned. So I appreciate it. Thanks to all of you for your volunteer time. I know we pay a ton of money, so thanks for sitting on that board. So on that, no, I'll move a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
And I'd like to thank everyone for coming, and also the opportunity to be in this joint meeting. And I'd also like a motion to adjourn.
I move that we adjourn.
I'll second yours.
Cool. I have a motion second to adjourn. Council. All in
All in
favor, say aye.
favor?
Or adjourn.
Or adjourn.
Thank you.